there, it's Phil Ratcliffe with Rebel Financial. Thanks for tuning in to our live broadcast today. Hope you guys are having a good start into the Thanksgiving season. Today we're going to do our next iteration of our book review. So today we're talking about Everybody Lies.
Everybody Lies by, I gotta read this because I messed it up, Seth Stevens Davidowitz, and you can see a copy of it here. So this is a great book, a fun book to read, and basically Everybody Lies is saying that what we tell ourselves, what we tell people, what we tell pollsters is not really necessarily what we're thinking, but ultimately what we're thinking we tell Google. And so the information that is out there these days compared to what we had even a couple decades ago is just, it's tremendous. And I think it'll be a game changer in terms of how we look at things. A little bit about the author. He does have a PhD in economics. But, as we've started the last few years to get really big into behavioral economics, I think it's also important to know that he has...
All three cameras froze. All three of them.
Keep going.
So he has...
Hold on. Is it going online?
No, it's froze. All three cameras are frozen right now.
But I mean, it's online and going.
Yeah, it's going on now.
Then why are you interrupting? All right, let's go. Sorry about that, guys. Let's keep going.
A little technical difficulty. But one of the good things about him, and I think why he relates so well, is he also has a bachelor's degree from Stanford in philosophy. And I'm just, so economics can be a really hard, numbers-driven, degree to get, field. But I think the best of it comes from when we have people looking at qualitative things as well. So anyway, that's a little bit about him, but I've given you a point, about the book. But really it's data in general that we want to talk about.
And it's a fun, quick read. I mean, even if you do it on Audible as an audiobook or what's, I think it's like less than 7 hours. So like a lot of the longer books are like 15 to 26, right? And so I think its main point is to give some examples so that people can understand. But I think interestingly, I think you kind of get the point that he's trying to mainly get the idea out there that almost anybody can do this. And back in the day, it used to take a lot of resources and time to collect data, to analyze that data. And it was very difficult to draw these conclusions, where now, because we have so much data that we all Google every day, or Bing, whatever you want to use, but we ask these questions. We give this data voluntarily because we want to know the answers. And so there are lots of cool tests that we can run to see what the real answers are, right?
Yeah, and like I said, we base our investment philosophy on data that we've garnered a lot more of the last couple decades, from the last couple of, and really from the last 100 years that we've been able to get the last, so many years. So it's everything. And the premise of the book, Everybody Lies, I alluded to, last week's book, Thinking in Bets. That goes to, so many people just kind of hunker down into a position and don't move off it. But now we just have so much data. And if we just really want to look for better answers, it's easier to do these days than it ever has been. But I think politics, there's so many things that people just come up with what they want the answer to be, then they just confirm what their answer is. But it's going to be harder and harder to do that for those that want to get away with it.
And sometimes it may be uncomfortable. I think one of the things that I felt about this book when I read it the first time was I was like, man, this is depressing. I mean, there's funny stories in there and but I guess my general feeling was maybe because you get around your friends and you know what your views are, and maybe if you're the type of person that would read a book like this, you probably are more a little bit up the evolutionary chain and maybe a little bit more altruistic or sophisticated. But to really take in the fact that there's still so many people out there that are racist or that harbor like really selfish, like sometimes bad feelings, and there's a lot of us out there, right? And so I think it's a little disconcerting to realize that that's the truth. And I think part of Seth's point there was that there's a lot of social pressure to answer things the way that we do. Even when it's an anonymous poll, a lot of times people don't want to tell the lady that looks like their aunt like something that would be embarrassing.
Yeah, have you smoked marijuana? Well, you're not going to tell your aunt you smoked marijuana, so you lie to the pollster, right? But you might Google things about.
Then you Google things, and sometimes we lie to ourselves. Like he was mentioning in there that some of the studies they did through the Google searches did very well to predict polls for like the Trump election, and even going and back testing past elections where people thought it was a surprise thing, but how people Googled or searched. It really wasn't. It was kind of predictive a little bit. And even if it was just as simple as the person that, even if you say that you're independent or undecided, when you search for stuff, you might put Trump Clinton or Clinton Trump. And based on the one that you put first, it's probably the person that you're going to vote for to a high degree. Even if you think you're undecided, just the fact that you put them in front is a very good indicator that that person is the front line for you. Right? Yeah.
Well, and so the book is a great read, and a lot of the topics we can't talk about here in this forum just because there are a lot of adult themes. So one of my favorite is if you ask people if they check into the weather, everybody says, "Oh yeah, I know what's going to happen today, the weather and all that." If you ask them if they watch porn, for the most part, people say to a large degree they don't. But there's a heck of a lot more porn searches online than there are for the weather.
Oh, yeah.
And so. So the themes that everybody lies on could be about sex, could be about politics. So we can't, we have to be somewhat politically correct here. But
I like the thing he throws out in the book, and we talked about like his original title for the book was going to be "How Big Is My Penis?" That's like the #1 search, and it's like he said, I find it comical that they asked Google that instead of getting a tape measure.
Right.
But and maybe he would have sold more books. I don't know. But his publishing guy would change it to "Everybody Lies." But it's interesting. Again, like a lot of it is crude because a lot of these things we wouldn't ask our friends or family members, but we'll ask Google, and it's good insight to who we are as people. And I think even though I said it's kind of disconcerting to learn that. We haven't evolved past this point. It's important to know where we are, because it's like you can't get better if you're not honest and realistic about where you are and who you are. And this is who we are. Even if there are things that we need to like get better as a people or know about each other to help each other. I mean, you got to know the truth, right? So. And
this will help that, but. There's other great purposes in this, right? I mean, a couple of examples I know that he mentioned is one, people will Google if they're suicidal, something about suicide, but prior to that, they'll Google something, and that will give us better ideas on what leads to people thinking about suicidal thoughts. A good one was, as an example, was pancreatic cancer, right? I mean, so people who Google and learn they have pancreatic cancer have had symptoms prior to that, so they're Googling things. And for instance, yellowish skin tells us that might be a pretty strong precursor to having, or telling you, an indicator, thank you, that you do have cancer. So there's a lot of great things that can come from this too, but then you start thinking about Big Brother too.
The bad things that they could use it for if it wasn't anonymous.
Yeah, and how, what Google searches might lead to committing a crime, right? Minority Report, and trying to figure that out. But another example that I found was interesting was after we have a Muslim hurt somebody or kill somebody, there's really a spike up in Google searches like killing Muslim people,
terrorist
for instance.
attacks. After 9/11.
It could be anybody, right? It could be any class of people.
It could be terrorists in that country looking for how to attack us. It's just you can see these things.
But it's thousands and thousands of people who might Google it, and then single-digit number of people who might carry it out.
Actually do it.
So what do we gain from that? So you've got to be careful from that much too. I mean, you've got to be careful about how you read data and what
you could use it for all kinds of things, like his example of the 2 Obama speeches. That happened after different terrorist attacks.
San Bernardino killing.
And how the first one was like by intellectuals and what's so deemed as like one of the greatest speeches in history, but actually when you look at the Google search results, it actually had the opposite result in terms if it inflamed people's emotions to actually think more about hate and revenge and stuff like that. And I don't know if they took the data or not, but his next speech was more about personalizing people and giving example of Muslims in our society that do great things and that are soldiers or people that have lost their sons fighting for us, and it had the right effect to really push it down and people and so like again we can use that data to be better people and not necessarily where you go down in history as one of the best speeches. It's kind of like now, you know, people remember Abe Lincoln's speech, right? But the one before it was supposed to be the touchstone speech, the Gettysburg Address, right? And then his speech was just like a couple minutes, and now it's like one of the best in history, right? And he wrote it on a train on his way there, and it was so short, the one before it, and nobody remembers it. It was like an hour and a half, and it was, you know, the newspapers and all the intellectuals said it was the best thing, and then Abe Lincoln's was just this short, but what's the one everybody remembers now, right?
Yeah. So. Going back to the Muslim example, yeah, it was funny because normally there's negative things in Google, but within those couple weeks after the speech, here, correct, you know, it was like the most positive that, you know, the people had thought about Muslims and thought about them as their neighbors just as they are, right, as opposed to the negative connotations that sometimes happen with that. The other part about this is, and, you know, I brought up the fact that his background, he's a philosophy major, as well as thinking about like thinking fast, thinking slow. I mean, you've got not just economists that are looking at some of this data, but psychologists and philosophers and things like that. So it's not just about the raw numbers, because that is where people can sometimes go astray if they just are looking for, you know, what are these numbers going to lead us to? And the great example there was the horses. And so American Pharoah was bought on the cheap by some people who really had scratched or really dug into a lot of the data, including he had one of the.
Well, he told the owner not to sell it, and so the people that bought it,
right?
And he told them, never in your life should you sell this horse.
But
and so he said, no, for no price should you sell this horse.
I thought he bought it in the auction.
He told the owner not to sell it.
I thought the owner bought it in the auction. But in either case, American Pharoah went on to win 2 of the 3 legs of the Triple Crown. But it wasn't just about the numbers. Before giving that advice, he brought somebody in, kind of old school, who really just went up to the horse and to confirm what he had said and to make sure that that person as well thought, you know, yeah, you're right, this horse does seem to be a very strong horse.
I think the interesting that was the thing that came on top of it, but that I cannot remember the name of the guy that did that, but he worked for over a decade trying to figure out an analytical statistical data way of like leg sizes or muscle content or whatever, and the main thing that there were 2 main variables that he found that actually correlated, the only ones really that correlated to the horse doing well, and it was the left ventricle of the heart. And that not only that, but that the other organs in the horse were larger than average as well. If you put those 2 things together, and then you put the qualitative stuff from somebody that knows horses together, then that was a very good predictor, more than heritage, genetics, or other physical characteristics. And so it was a cool story. He's got lots of good stories in that book.
He goes from one story to the other. In fact, that's where he loves his book. But using your example, that kind of ties into, for instance, the stock market, right? Because now you think about the horses, that secret's out of the barn, so to speak, right? And so now people are going to know exactly what to look for in horses, and they might ignore other factors. But when we think about stock markets, people are always trying to get an edge in the stock markets. So they're trying to wean data and find some kind of relationship between, you know, now and what's going to happen down the road to particular stocks. But once somebody gets that little advantage, everybody moves in on it, and then the advantage is gone. And so that's why, you know, we're always preaching that is why diversification is really what matters in picking individual stocks is nearly impossible, just because the ways that you glean some of that information quickly gets disseminated to so many people, and then you don't have an edge.
So real quick before we finish up, we're going to give you just an example if we can get the screen share working, hopefully. No more tech glitches. But if we've got that up here, Tony's going to quick show you. This is about like most of what his book is using is this Google Trends, and we'll put a link below as well. So go ahead, Tony.
So here is, okay, so let me see. This is, so you can see just as we scroll down, like,
Just some of the examples.
we want to see who likes Taylor Swift versus Kim Kardashian, for instance, and who likes them where, right? Who has an interest in where in the World Cup, and then American football, where is that? So this is just some of it, but the reality is you can come
You
up
can do
here.
whatever you want.
You can come up here and say, financial, search financial, what happens? And so you can, this is me trying to look for something to talk to, but you can also, create your own into what, if you have some kind of thing.
Yeah, so if you were to say financial planner versus financial advisor, like something we might look for, and then it can compare the trend between the two, or you could say, what's something that's popular going on right now?
So if I look at the two, like how often are they Googled in this example, so the economy or the economics really as a field is Googled much less than financial. And those are two very generic terms. So you can see how you can hone in on this, and really it's a great way to be able to find things. So, and yet when we look at investments.
Lower than economics.
Yeah, so is that,
Oh, man, economics has some volatility there.
Yeah.
But there are lots of things you can do, and look how, that's like immediate. Before you would have to have like tons of data, and I would say the more esoteric you would get to drill it down into something more niche, the more insight you could get from it. But I think that, again, when I mentioned this at the beginning, I think half the point of his book, though, was really trying to say, this data exists now, more of us need to use it, and maybe we could do more things with it, and who knows what would happen with it. We could live better lives, we could be better people, we could be a better society.
Right.
So comment below. We're going to try to put some of this out there. Hopefully our technical glitches didn't make this too bad. If the live's not working right, we will get this rendered and up there ASAP in a few minutes. But next week we're going to be off for Thanksgiving. We hope you guys have a fabulous Thanksgiving and have lots to be thankful for. The week after that, December 6th, we're going to have Valerie Schwartzman in here, who is the CFO of Homeport. And then December 13th, we'll be doing our monthly financial planning subject. Then the next week, the 20th, we'll be off for Christmas. And then the 27th, we'll be back to end out the year with one more book review. We haven't really decided. We put that out there to do a biography, and we didn't get a lot of responses back. So we really want you guys to be interactive with us, help us decide on some of these things. If we don't get that by the end of the weekend, we're probably just going to pick one and put it out there of either some great books that we've read and we're going to revisit, or pick something new that's got great reviews. So again, thanks for tuning in. Wish you the best. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.